After years of silence, Meryl Streep finally speaks out, revealing her secret about Robert Redford and the feelings they never spoke of. Before we begin, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the latest untold stories of our golden legends. And remember, you can always check the sources anytime. There was something unspoken between them, something quiet, powerful, and carefully hidden behind professionalism and respect. And to understand why it mattered so much, we must first understand who Meryl Streep truly is. Meryl Streep was never simply chasing fame. Born with a sharp mind, emotional intelligence, and an almost instinctive understanding of human complexity, she carved her path with discipline rather than noise. From her early years, Meryl learned that talent alone was never enough. It had to be paired with courage, restraint, and an unshakable sense of self. As her career rose, so did the weight on her shoulders. She was not just becoming one of the most respected actresses of her generation. She was also a mother, a partner, and a woman navigating an industry that rarely made space for vulnerability. Her performances were never loud for attention. They were precise, restrained, and deeply human. And yet behind that composure, there were moments that shaped her emotionally, moments she chose not to speak about until now. There is a quiet irony at the center of Meryl Streep's story. The woman widely regarded as the greatest actress of her time never set out to become a symbol. She did not build her career on spectacle, provocation, or carefully engineered mystique. Instead, she built it on work, slow, deliberate, often invisible work. And perhaps that is why her legacy feels less like a monument and more like a mirror. When audiences watch Meryl Streep, they do not see her trying to be unforgettable. They see themselves at their most fragile, most conflicted, most real. Her journey begins far from the spotlight in Summit, New Jersey, where she was born Mary Louise Streep in 1949. Her father worked in pharmaceuticals, her mother was a commercial artist, and creativity was treated not as a fantasy but as a discipline. Her mother, in particular, believed fiercely in her daughter's potential, often telling her, "You're capable of anything you set your mind to." It was encouragement without illusion, support that came with expectations of effort, not entitlement. From an early age, Meryl understood observation. She watched people closely, how they spoke when they were nervous, how they moved when they were tired, how their voices changed when they were telling the truth or hiding from it. This sensitivity would later become her greatest tool, but as a young girl, it simply made her feel different. She sang, she studied, she absorbed. And while others chased popularity, she chased understanding. At Vassar College and later at Yale School of Drama, Meryl refined something rare, restraint. While many actors were taught to project, to dominate a room, she learned the power of stillness. Professors noticed it immediately. She could say more with a pause than others could with a monologue. She treated acting not as performance but as translation, taking the inner lives of people and rendering them visible. Yet even with extraordinary training, the industry was not waiting with open arms. Early auditions came with rejection and sometimes with condescension. She was told she wasn't right for certain roles, not glamorous enough, not conventional enough, too serious, too intellectual. These were not critiques of her skill, but of her refusal to be simplified. Then came The Deer Hunter. Her performance was brief, almost understated, yet unforgettable. It was followed by Kramer vs. Kramer, a role that captured the emotional cost of motherhood and divorce with devastating honesty. Almost overnight, Meryl Streep became a name spoken with reverence, but success did not shield her from pain, it coincided with it. During this period, she lost the love of her life, actor John Cazale, to cancer. He was ill as her career was accelerating, and she stood beside him through his final days. It was a loss that reshaped her entirely. Grief did not make her louder, it made her deeper. She learned that love and loss were not opposites but extensions of the same truth. That understanding would echo through every role she took thereafter. Shortly after, she met sculptor Don Gummer, a relationship built not on fame but on grounding. While her public life grew increasingly visible, her private life remained fiercely protected. Marriage and motherhood did not slow her career, they reframed it. She became acutely aware of time, of balance, of the invisible labor women carry both on and off screen. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Meryl Streep delivered performances that redefined what acting could be. Sophie's Choice was not just a role, it was an emotional excavation. To portray a woman forced into an impossible moral decision during the Holocaust required not only technical mastery, but ethical sensitivity. Meryl approached it with humility, aware that some stories demand silence as much as expression. The performance earned her an Academy Award, but more importantly, it earned trust from audiences who sensed she would never exploit pain for applause. As accolades accumulated, so did expectations. Every new role was met with the question, can she do it again? And each time she answered not by repeating herself but by disappearing. Accents, postures, rhythms, she transformed without erasing her humanity. Whether playing a Polish survivor, a British prime minister, a troubled chef, or a conflicted magazine editor, she found the person beneath the persona. Yet behind the mastery was exhaustion. The pressure to remain exceptional is a quiet burden. Meryl rarely spoke about it publicly, but she felt it deeply. She once reflected that women in Hollywood are often celebrated briefly, then scrutinized relentlessly. Aging for an actress is not just a biological process, it is a political one. And instead of resisting it, Meryl confronted it head-on. She chose roles that explored power, doubt, and complexity in older women. She refused invisibility. In The Devil Wears Prada, she played authority without apology, crafting a character who was feared not because she was cruel, but because she was precise. In Julie and Julia, she found joy and hunger in reinvention. In The Iron Lady, she portrayed Margaret Thatcher not as a caricature, but as a study in ambition and isolation. What made these performances resonate was not imitation, it was empathy. Meryl never played characters to judge them, she played them to understand them. And in doing so, she invited audiences to do the same. Off-screen, she became something else entirely, a quiet advocate. She spoke about gender equality, about the value of the arts, about the importance of listening. When she addressed powerful rooms, she did not shout. She spoke carefully, choosing words that carried weight without spectacle. Her courage was not performative, it was consistent. There were moments when she allowed the world to glimpse the woman beneath the legend. She spoke of doubt, of fear, of the constant negotiation between ambition and presence. She acknowledged mistakes, regrets, and the emotional cost of excellence. These admissions did not diminish her stature, they expanded it. What makes Meryl Streep enduring is not perfection. It is integrity. She never chased relevance, she earned it. She never tried to dominate culture, she contributed to it. Her work stands as a testament to what happens when craft is guided by conscience. And perhaps the most powerful aspect of her legacy is this: she made space for complex women, for aging gracefully, for intelligence, for silence. In an industry built on noise, she proved that depth lasts longer. Today, when young actors cite her as inspiration, they are not just referencing awards or box office success. They are referencing permission, the permission to be thoughtful, to be patient, to be human. Meryl Streep showed that greatness does not require spectacle, it requires truth. As the years continue, her legend grows not because she demands it, but because she deserves it. And behind every iconic role, every standing ovation, every whispered accolade, remains the same woman who began her journey not chasing fame, but understanding. As the years continue, her legend grows not because she demands it, but because she deserves it. And behind every iconic role, every standing ovation, every whispered accolade, remains the same woman who began her journey not chasing fame, but understanding. But even the strongest artists have moments that linger in memory. And somewhere in the middle of her rise, one presence stood out, quietly, unmistakably. That presence was Robert Redford. Robert Redford didn't need to command a room. He simply entered it. With a natural charm that never felt forced, Redford represented a rare kind of Hollywood masculinity, calm, thoughtful, and grounded. Success came early, but ego never defined him. Instead, he became known for balance, between fame and privacy, art and principle, ambition and family. By the time he crossed paths with Meryl, Redford had already mastered something many never do: how to remain human in an industry that constantly tries to reshape you. He carried himself with confidence, yes, but also with generosity, humor, and quiet wisdom. And when these two forces met, something shifted. There is something deceptively simple about Robert Redford. At first glance, his legacy appears obvious: the golden hair, the effortless smile, the kind of presence that seemed designed for the camera long before he ever stepped in front of one. But to reduce Redford to charisma alone is to miss the deeper truth. His power was never just how he looked, it was how little he needed to prove. Born Charles Robert Redford Jr. in 1936 in Santa Monica, California, his early life was not shaped by privilege or certainty. His family moved often, his childhood marked by instability and a quiet sense of restlessness. He was not an academic standout, nor was he a disciplined prodigy. In fact, his youth was defined more by confusion than clarity. He drifted, rebelled, and searched for meaning in ways that did not always make sense at the time. Art became his first language of expression. Before acting, Redford studied painting and drawing, spending time in Europe absorbing culture without knowing exactly what he would do with it. That period of wandering, often romanticized in retrospect, was formative. It taught him to observe, to listen, to understand the world not as a place to conquer, but as something to engage with thoughtfully. When he eventually found his way to acting, it was not with desperation but curiosity. Early roles came slowly: television work, stage performances, modest appearances that tested his patience. Hollywood did not immediately know what to do with him. He was handsome, yes, but there was something introspective about him that resisted easy categorization. He wasn't loud enough to be a rebel icon, nor aggressive enough to be a traditional leading man. Then came Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The role of the Sundance Kid crystallized something the industry had not yet named. Redford wasn't performing masculinity, he was redefining it. His charm wasn't rooted in dominance but in ease. He didn't overpower scenes, he shared them. Opposite Paul Newman, Redford held his own not by competing but by complementing. The result was electric. From that moment on, his ascent was inevitable, but what followed was intentional. Redford did not chase every offer. He was selective, instinctive, almost stubbornly independent. Films like The Way We Were, All the President's Men, and Jeremiah Johnson revealed a pattern, characters who were thoughtful, conflicted, and morally awake. At the height of his fame, when most actors would have leaned fully into celebrity, Redford began pulling away. He guarded his private life fiercely. Family mattered to him not as a public image but as an anchor. Fame, he understood, was not something to be fed endlessly. It was something to be managed. That understanding came at a cost. Redford experienced profound personal loss, including the death of his son. Grief altered his relationship with the world, deepening his introspection and reinforcing his belief that life's most important moments happen far from the spotlight. While Hollywood continued to celebrate him as an icon, he became increasingly focused on meaning over applause. This shift would define the second half of his career. When Redford turned to directing, it was not an escape, it was an expansion. Ordinary People, his directorial debut, was a quiet, devastating exploration of family trauma and emotional repression. It won the Academy Award for Best Picture and Best Director, but more importantly, it announced something rare. Redford was not interested in power for its own sake. He was interested in truth. Again and again, his choices reflected principle. He founded the Sundance Institute not as a vanity project, but as a platform for voices that would otherwise go unheard. Independent filmmakers, marginalized storytellers, narratives too subtle or uncomfortable for mainstream studios found a home under his stewardship. Sundance became less about Redford the star and more about Redford the curator. This distinction matters. While many actors of his generation clung to relevance, Redford created space. He stepped back so others could step forward. That generosity, rarely celebrated in an industry built on competition, became one of his defining traits. By the time he and Meryl Streep shared the screen, Redford was no longer just a leading man, he was a presence. Someone whose stillness carried weight, someone who didn't need to dominate a scene to elevate it. Their collaboration felt less like chemistry and more like recognition. Two artists who understood restraint, two people who knew that what remains unsaid often matters more than what is spoken. Where Meryl brought emotional precision, Redford brought calm gravity. Together, they created a dynamic rooted not in spectacle, but in mutual respect. What made Redford compelling alongside her was not performance, it was alignment. He did not try to outshine, he listened, he reacted, he allowed silence to breathe. This was the culmination of decades of self-awareness. Redford's masculinity never depended on control. He did not need to be the loudest voice or the most dominant presence. His authority came from consistency, from showing up with integrity again and again. In an era when Hollywood masculinity was often defined by excess, he offered something else: steadiness. Even as he aged, Redford resisted the pressure to reinvent himself artificially. He did not chase youth or relevance. He accepted time as part of the narrative. His later roles carried a reflective quality, men looking back, weighing choices, reckoning with consequence. These performances were not about nostalgia, they were about reckoning. Off-screen, his activism mirrored his artistry. Environmental causes, political accountability, cultural preservation, Redford engaged deeply, not performatively. He believed influence came with responsibility, and he used his platform with care. He spoke when it mattered and stayed quiet when it didn't. That restraint is perhaps his greatest lesson. In a culture obsessed with constant visibility, Robert Redford demonstrated the power of absence. By stepping away, he allowed his work to speak louder. By refusing to overshare, he preserved mystery. By prioritizing principle over popularity, he built trust. And so his legacy endures not just in films but in systems, in institutions, in the countless careers nurtured through Sundance, in the stories that might never have been told without his belief. When audiences remember Robert Redford, they often remember how he made them feel: calm, thoughtful, seen, not dazzled but grounded. He reminded viewers that strength does not require aggression and charisma does not require effort. He simply entered the room. And in doing so, he changed it. In the larger story, alongside figures like Meryl Streep, Redford represents something increasingly rare. A life shaped not by hunger for attention but by respect for craft, people, and purpose. Their intersection was not accidental. It was inevitable. Two forces moving at the same frequency, drawn together not by fame but by values. And when those values aligned, something shifted, not just on screen, but in the story Hollywood tells itself about greatness. Their connection was never loud, never public, never dramatic, but it was real enough to be noticed and strong enough to be remembered decades later. Their collaboration brought them together in a way few partnerships ever achieve. Off camera, they talked, they laughed, they shared perspectives on life, art, and family. There was ease, comfort, a sense of being understood without explanation. Those around them noticed how naturally they connected, not because of scandal, but because of harmony. It was the kind of bond built on mutual respect, admiration, and timing that never quite aligns. And that's where the truth waited. But today, Meryl Streep finally decided to break her silence. She admitted that she felt something for him, something unexpected, a deep admiration. She once said Robert Redford was the best kisser I had ever met in the movies. She spoke about how much she loved Robert's presence beside her and his influence, not only as an actor but as a man who showed her how to protect what truly matters, how to keep the people you love sacred, how to live in the spotlight without being consumed by it. She acknowledged that her feelings were never acted on, never spoken aloud at the time, and perhaps that was the hardest part. Because some emotions don't fade. They simply grow quieter, settling into reflection. Looking back, it almost feels inevitable that Robert Redford would inspire such admiration. His character, his balance, his integrity. It was only natural. But as Meryl reflects now, there's a gentle honesty in her words. Perhaps it would have been better to be truthful in that moment, not to change the outcome, but to honor the feeling while time still allowed it. Because time, once it passes, never returns. If you appreciate stories like this, follow the channel for more exclusive insights into Hollywood's most iconic figures. Sources and references are available in the description. Stay curious, stay connected. And we'll see you in the next story.